of the things about our show is it's going to be unique.
You are what you do. You can say any amount of things that you want to say, but what you do is what everybody sees.
Some people are like, oh, I'm just going to JV it. Like, let's just JV it. Like, what the hell does that mean?
I cannot tell you how excited I am to hang out with you guys today, so thank you so much.
Well, then that end buyer could come back and say, well, I didn't fully understand that it was subject to.
That's not a thing. Like, the SEC has thought of all of these things. They've been here since 1932.
And you can do what you want with your property.
Buyers have time, they have negotiating power, they have options.
Oh my gosh, I'm blown away by your inexperience, and they've been in business 20 years.
And that includes things other people put on your property, right? It's your property that'll be okay. Suddenly, Cousin Jimmy's in a lawsuit.
A novation is replacing one contract or one obligation with another.
Out with the old, in with the new.
Yes.
Hey folks, welcome to the show. Today our topic is Life Coach 101, best strategies to balance your life for your business sake. I'm Andy Fowler and I'm here with Sean St. Clair. If you're new to the show, make sure to like and subscribe to our channels. You can find us on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, now known as X, and you can find us at the handle @InRem Podcast. That is @InRem Podcast. You can also download the audio version of the podcast on Spotify or on Apple Podcasts. Just go to Apple, leave us a review, and download it. It's just as easy as that. With that, we're going to turn it over to Sean, who has our legal update.
Thank you, Andy. So today I want to talk about the importance of removing the due on sale clause from seller wrap financing and the proper disclosure to the seller that you're doing it. So every deed of trust as a standard clause or mortgage is going to have a due on sale clause, or some people call it an alienation clause, which basically says, look, if you borrower go and convey or transfer this property or do something else with respect to the property, sometimes it could be a long-term lease. You could even limit, the ability to provide an option, a contract for deed. But if you go and you convey an interest in the property and you do not obtain the lender's approval before doing that, that is an alienation that entitles the lender to come out of the woodwork and require that the full loan balance be paid. So that's called invoking the due on sale clause. So the lender has the ability to invoke the due on sale clause and require the full payment amount. Well, what about when you are purchasing a property subject to, and you're providing the seller with wrap financing, meaning you're committing to the seller and telling the seller, hey, look, seller, I'm going to make your mortgage payment for you. Or maybe the seller is carrying some of the equity and you say, hey, seller, I'm going to make monthly payments to a servicing agent or to you. And then we're going to use those funds to pay the lender and some amount to you. But we're going to keep your underlying loan in place. But the seller ends up with basically a second position mortgage or deed of trust on the property that secures your performance. You're going to pay their mortgage for them, basically is what wrap financing states. And you make the seller a lender with the ability to foreclose on the property if you don't perform. Well, if you go and draft a standard mortgage or deed of trust, you're going to end up with a due on sale clause in favor of the seller. Well, what happens if you're an investor and you decide at some later date, well, I want to sell this property to somebody else, to an end buyer, and I want to sell it subject to. I want to leave the original mortgage in place. I want to leave the seller wrap financing in place. And then I'm going to sell it to this end buyer and I'm going to provide my own financing. So, you're going to sit in third position and provide your own seller carryback financing. Well, you can do that. But if the original seller had a due on sale clause in their wrap financing documents, they could come out of the woodwork and say, hey, time out. You can't do that. And so now you owe me the full loan amount. You have to pay off my loan, which would result in paying off the underlying loan against the property. And sellers may very well do this because there are times, and we see this over and over in our litigation department, where sellers have remorse. They enter into purchase contracts and they even close escrow and decide, oh, well, I don't want to do this subject to thing anymore for one reason or the other. Maybe they've spoken with somebody, a real estate professional who says, oh, you shouldn't have done that or whatever. It doesn't matter, but they somehow decide, I no longer want to do this transaction. And so they're looking for an opportunity to unwind it. So if you as the investor go and sell the property to a third party, or maybe even do a lease option, depending on what the due on sale clause states, the seller could then jump on that and say, oh, wait a minute, that's an alienation. Now you have to pay this off in 30 days. And if you don't, then I can foreclose and, take the property back. Well, you as the investor do not want that. So you want to make sure that you remove the due on sale clause. A lot of investors, when they do their wrap financing, they will have the title company prepare the deed of trust and the mortgage. And I will tell you, the title company's documents are going to have that due on sale clause in there. And you need to make sure to have that removed. But prior to having that removed, you need something in writing from the seller authorizing the removal of that clause, because that is a standard clause in a deed of trust or a mortgage. So you need to either have a subject to addendum that states expressly within that subject to addendum that the mortgage and deed of trust will not have a due on sale clause, and have the seller initial, so that, there's no question that they were, given fair warning. They were advised that the wrap financing documents will not have a due on sale clause. Or if you didn't use a subject to addendum that has that provision, then you should have some document, some, addendum, some acknowledgement that you submit at closing to have the seller sign off on and acknowledge that they understand that the documents being provided for their protection, putting them in second position on the property, is not going to have a due on sale clause. And then you need to make sure to have that due on sale clause removed. If you don't do that, you run the risk that if you want to use a disposition method of a subsequent seller carry, an agreement for sale, contract for deed, or even a lease with an option to purchase, that you may fall right squarely within that due on sale clause and give the seller the ability to call the loan, which is what you don't want to have happen. So make sure that if you are purchasing property subject to, and you're providing some form of wrap financing, which I recommend, that's the way I like to do subject to transactions, is to provide the seller with wrap financing. If you're doing that, you need to make sure that you don't have that due on sale clause, especially if your intent or you want the ability at some future time to do your own seller carryback financing. And then in addition to that, you need to make sure that the seller is made aware of it and executes or initials or, sign some form of acknowledgement that they understand that their loan documents will not have a due on sale clause.
All right, good stuff. Thank you, Sean, for that. Let's get into a few announcements for you, the listener, here at the NREM podcast. So every Wednesday, we have the Creative Finance Collective. Every Wednesday at 5:00 p.m. Arizona time, we host that live on Facebook, YouTube, and X. So you can join it live. And so what is the Creative Finance Collective? That is just a collection of attorneys and professionals in the creative finance space from a variety of different states and jurisdictions to get together and talk about all things creative finance. And there is no set discussion other than we explore different topics that we see that we're dealing with, address questions as to each other, but then we also address and make ourselves available to questions from the audience. So this is an invaluable time for you, the listener, to participate, not just with Sean and I, but with lawyers all over the country that are in the creative finance space, to ask them questions. Obviously, we're not your lawyers, and we're going to, with respect to specific questions, direct you to find a lawyer in your state. But there's really a limited number of lawyers in this space that are dealing with creative finance at a real root level and have a real appreciation for what it is. Sean, we've talked about this a number of times, but maybe a handful of lawyers, 10 10 or so. There's not that many nationwide that hold themselves out as being professionals in the creative finance space, right?
Yeah, that's correct. And really, it's nice that the audience can sit in and hear our conversation. But for me, the real benefit for the collective is being able to network and communicate or connect with and learn from these other attorneys that are within this space. I mean, it's a regular occurrence that I and the other attorneys are learning from each other and making changes to the way we operate, the way we structure transactions, the way we draft documents, the clauses that we have in there. And it's a real benefit to us as attorneys. And then the audience who is practicing in that space and buying properties utilizing these methods, I mean, they're sitting there hearing from basically some of the best attorneys in this space discuss the different strategies and things like that. And it's only improving their ability to effectively buy and sell real estate.
Yeah, so a real good opportunity, and guess what? It's free to all of you. Every Wednesday, 5:00 p.m. So tomorrow, you'll find us on Facebook or YouTube, and for the hour, we'll be there for a hard hour, answering questions, going through creative finance. So if this is your opportunity to jump in, find out more about creative finance, or figure out ways to approach deals, this is your opportunity. Also, in today's show, we're going to take questions in the final 15 minutes of the show. So if you have a question, make sure to post it. I'm going to turn it over to Mayu, who can give you instructions on how to go about doing that.
Thank you, Andy. And thank you, everyone, for joining us today on the NREM podcast. It is 10 a.m. on Tuesday. And yes, we are live and we do want to hear from you. Andy and Sean and our guests take questions live at the end of the show. Today, we're talking about strategies to balance your life for your business sake. So if you're watching us live, whether it's from our YouTube or Facebook pages, and you have a question in mind related to today's topic, go ahead and drop it in the comments, and we'll try to get to all of them at the last 10 to 15 minutes of the podcast. So thanks again for joining us, and I'll turn it back to you, Andy.
All right. Thank you, Mayu. Like Mayu said, just post your questions in the comments, and do it now, because if you wait like I do until the end, you'll just forget. So put it in there. Don't have a senior moment. Put it in there and we'll get to it. All right. So today we're talking about Life Coach 101. So strategies for balancing your life for your business sake. And if you're looking to Sean and I to answer those questions, you're looking to the wrong place. That's why we have guests on the show that it can help us discuss those topics. And with us today to discuss being a life coach and balancing life and work is Keston Glasgow. Keston, thanks so much for being with us.
Man, Andy and Sean, thank you guys for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, we're super excited to see you and have you. So I know you're both a real estate investor and a life coach. We'll get into all that. Tell us how you got into real estate investing.
Ooh, so real estate investing really started, I would say, just about a decade ago, where I went through this breakup with my ex-wife, and had a moment where I wanted to provide a better future for my son, right? And so moving out of the house, and moved into with my parents for a little bit, and then finally bought a property for my son, for my parents, and it was the place, right? And so being able to do that 10 years ago was a big deal for me. And in this property, man, it was I used to live in Queens at that point in time, so it was in Queens, and I just wanted the best for my son, and his name is David. And so it was really close to the pools, the best schools, and it was just a really amazing area. And I remembered when I said, you know what, big boy, it was probably like a month after closing on the property, like, hey, let's go to the pool. So, just because daddy, look at what daddy did for you, like that moment when you do something for your kids. And so it's like that Saturday we go, we get our floaties, we get everything ready, and we're in line going to the pool. You could smell the chlorine. Everything is there. You can hear the excitement going on. And we get to the front of the line, and the attendant is like, hey, where's your ID? Let me see your ID. Gives him the ID, ready to go. And the next 4 words, man, really changed everything for me. He said, "You can't come in." And I'm like, "Well, what do you mean?" He said, "You don't live in this county." I said, "Dude, I live 5 minutes away. What do you mean I don't live in this county?" And right there and then was the moment that really changed everything, because my son is standing right next to me. Daddy is proud. He's like, "Let's keep going." And I can't get in. All of the hard work, all of the things that I went through to get to this moment really came shattering down for me. And with tears in my eye, we had to turn around and not get in. And I was really upset for months, really upset for months, where I kept blaming the richer get richer and, all of these things, until I had a moment where I said, "You know what, Kes? Here's where I'm going to just get a financial education." Because what I didn't know back then was I bought the property on the border of Queens and Long Island. I literally lived on a property line. And so I had Queens taxes, but I had Long Island's amenity, right? You turn right around the corner and I get everything Long Island. But I didn't hire a coach. I didn't hire a realtor. I didn't hire someone who knew my goals and what I wanted to do to tell me, "Hey, if you want this for your kid, you got to go the street across. Like, you wouldn't get it here." And so I decided, man, that's when I committed to wanting to change my life, get a better financial education. And as many people who are probably listening know, when you make that decision, you end up going back to your old lifestyle, right? The first time you make that decision, it's like, I want to change my life, but you keep going back. Then you decide again, you go to another conference. And it wasn't until 2020, when I had enough. By this time I was remarried, and my wife and we committed to real estate. And so in January of 2020, we decided that we invested in a coaching mentorship for real estate. And we paid that $30K, man. We're like, boom, we're committed, all in. And in March, what happened in March? The world shut down.
Mhm.
Right. And so we're like, crap, what do we do? Because the company that we invested in kind of went ghost. Right. Nobody knew what was really going on. But this was a hot 30K, man. It was our last. It was like, we're going, like, just all bets aside, we're betting on ourselves. And thankfully, for the integrity of the speaker who was at the event, he decided that although the company wasn't functioning, he was going to keep doing weekly masterminds virtually to help the people that he enrolled. And so he got us going, and he taught us how to wholesale and all this type of stuff. At the same time, I hired my first high performance coach that really helped me to balance life and work and a hustle, right? Because that's what it was in 2020. It was a hustle. And so even as the world was shutting down, we moved to Georgia for unrelated reasons. And when we moved to Georgia, I actually, and this is not advice to anyone, I left my 6-figure Wall Street 9-to-5 job as a cybersecurity engineer for a law firm before doing my first deal. The confidence that I had from my high performance coach and the information that I was getting, and also spiritual. I'm a spiritual guy. And so all of these things combined gave me the confidence to go out. And so in the first 6 months from July, which was my last day at work, July 1st to December, we closed over 1.5 times my 6-figure salary wholesaling. And at that point in time, I'm like, okay, this is good, but I got to keep showing up. I want financial freedom. What do we do here? And so that's when I got more into creative financing, and I joined the subto community, because I'm like, man, this guy knows the piece that I'm missing, right? And so from join subto in at the end of 2020, December 2020, and from 2021 to the end of 2021, we closed. We went from 1 to 21 doors, all bought creatively. And from there, we got into multifamily. And if we were to bring everything to today, now we own a little over $10 million in real estate that we were able to acquire on this journey. And so that's kind of how I got started in real estate and to where we are today.
Wow, awesome story. So we know you're not just a real estate investor, though. You also are a business coach, and it sounds like you were the recipient of a lot of mentorship. Although mentorship requires somebody who wants to be mentored, and you clearly did. Was that what brought you into doing the coaching?
So it's actually pretty interesting, because as I was in the subto community, I would do these every day. There's this thing called the Daily Dial, where it's basically sales training. And so every Tuesday, I would do these sales training calls, helping the new people come in, understand how to close deals and all that type of stuff, right? And so as I did that, I started to realize that it wasn't a matter of people knowing sales. And because the entire week there was sales calls, I just did the Tuesday. And I said, it's not the sales that most people don't have, it's their mindset. And so in this 2-hour call that I still do to this day, in this 2-hour call, I started to say, you know what, let me do 5 minutes or 10 minutes of mindset, then I'll get into sales. Then a few weeks after, I moved it from 10 minutes to 30 minutes of mindset. Then I moved it to an hour of mindset. Then I moved it. One day I said, you know what, guys, screw this. I'm not doing sales anymore. We're only going to be doing mindset. This is going to be called Transformation Tuesdays on the spot. And I just changed the entire thing. I thought I was going to get kicked off, but they kept me, right? And as I kept doing that, one day a guy reached out to me in Facebook DMs, and he said, hey man, I know you don't do this professionally, but I want to pay you to be my coach, because I think you could help me change my life and get further in my business. And when I got that text, I sent it to my wife. I'm like, what do I say? Right? And she's like, I think you should do it. Then I'm like, nah. I sent it to my family. I'm like, what do I say? They're all like, dude, this is what we've been telling you. You should do this. You do it for other people all the time. And I'm like, okay. And I accepted it. I said, okay, here's what. Let's do it. We met, we talked, and then we started. And so in the first 6 months of working with this guy, I was able to help him triple his business. And also, there were some things that he wanted to achieve in his family life. He was able to have better relationships with his family and the balance and the things that he needed. And that moment made me start to appreciate seeing transformation and how I felt inside way more than any deal that I've ever done. Like any deal. And I'm like, whoa, what is this? Right? And so I ended up doing it again and again. And I'm like, man, this, like, real estate is amazing. Thank God for the cash flow. And I love everything about real estate. We're always going to be real estate investors. But this right here is fulfillment. This feels like purpose. And so that's how I ended up getting in. And since then, we've been able to transform a little bit over 300 lives so far, with a goal of 1 million by 2028. So really shooting for it here.
So, Keston, well, tell us the name of your coaching business and how folks can find that.
So the name of the coaching business is Purpose Waze, and it's WAZE. And Waze is a GPS. And so I like to help people find there's a framework that we use where there are four main elements of a GPS, where it's the first thing you need for your GPS to work is a connection, right? Like every GPS needs to know like it's connected to T-Mobile, Verizon, Wi-Fi, whatever it is. And so as humans, we all need a connection to a higher power, whoever your higher power may be, but we need that connection. The second important part for a GPS to work is your current location. The GPS has to know where you are, otherwise you'll never get the right directions. And so understanding your current location as a human are these daunting questions that people are afraid to ask. Who am I? Why am I here? What talents do I have? And this is just understanding what traumas you've gone through, what paradigms you fight with, right? All of those questions are at your current location. Then it's, where am I going? That's your destination. Every GPS needs that address. And so understanding where you're going, and I think a lot of people have false destinations because of what they see on Instagram or social media. And so they have someone else's destination in there at the wrong location, and they just end up crashing and never getting there, right? But we could get deeper into that later. But that's the third element, the destination. So I help people understand and connect their purpose to where they're going. And the last piece, the fourth element, is turn-by-turn directions. Being able to understand and know, like, hey, make a left here, make a right, and see someone through understanding the right directions, because a lot of us has disrespected our GPS, where it tells you to turn right here on 123 Main Street. And you're like, man, I've been going left all of my life. You turn left and end up in traffic, right? We're the blind spot keepers. And so in Purpose Waze, we help people get to their GPS, to their destination, using this GPS formula to get them the outcomes that they need. And so you could find me on Facebook, you could find me on Instagram, all at Kes on Purpose, and the Facebook group is called Purpose Ways Community.
So, Keston, let's dive in. I'm sure that everybody listening, and probably everybody you run into, has some conception of what they think a life coach is. And if we were to ask the average person on the street, we'd probably get 25 different definitions of what it is. And maybe there's some similarities, but there's probably a lot of misconception around it.
Yeah.
What is, at least in your practice, in your profession, what does it mean to be a life coach?
Well, it's really similar to the analogy I just gave with the GPS. When you could understand someone's being and understanding their spirituality, understanding what they're currently going through, understanding where they're going, and just helping them get there, it really ties in all elements of life, because at your current location, here's where you could deal with fitness and energy and all these different topics. Spirituality, without that, you're really dead. You're just functioning. There's no joy, no peace, no love without connecting to that higher power, and without having goals or motivation or just something to do. You're stuck. Right. And so helping someone in all these different facets and areas of life to get them to their desired outcome, that's what I consider to be a life coach, taking a holistic approach, not just in real estate, not just in crypto, not just in like one area. It's all elements of life to get them to where they need to go.
So a lot of times, people think, well, I'm successful at what I do. I'm doing well. My personal life is good. Things seem, good for me. And they don't think they have a need for, say, a life coach, et cetera. But, who is a prime candidate for life coaching?
Yeah. Anyone that says that, I always say, would your wife say the same thing? Or would your kids say the same thing? Right? Because your perception of doing great and having your family or friends think that everything is well when they actually want more time from you, or we can't see it on the outside. My ideal client, right now I only help real estate investors right now and entrepreneurs. And the reason why is because that's where, when it comes to being able to take them where they need to go, because of my experience, I could help them. I could give them a lot of resources when it comes to setting up businesses and that type of thing. That's what I have experience in. And I always vow to my clients to never talk about anything that I've never experienced. Right. That's kind of like something that I'm very, very big on. And so right now, entrepreneurs, real estate investors, they're the ideal fit. Now, there's subsets of this, because a lot of men come to me, and they come to me because they see my wife and I doing business together. And one of the questions they ask is like, man, how do you get your wife to be on the same page? Right. And doing business together and all of that. And so my ideal client would also be men who are wanting to do business with their wives, or even just want a level of harmony between their marriages and their business. How do you not feel unsupported? Right? How do you feel like everyone just is going in the right direction? Or one of the statements I make sure and I ask people to say, to know if this is you, is if you've ever said the statement of, I'm doing this for us. If you've ever said that, then there needs to be a little bit more harmony in your relationship and the business, because that means that there's no understanding or not enough. So that's kind of my ideal client.
Keston, that makes a lot of sense, given that, the marital relationship is maybe life's biggest partnership, right?
Oh, yeah,
or meant to be on all facets and different levels, and why that can't be taken from the personal finance realm to the business realm or whatever you're doing. It's just integrating that. I'm curious, and I want to explore this a little bit. You mentioned earlier in getting into business coaching, this sense of a mindset problem, where you were shifting the discussion to skills, to talking more and more against mindset. As you've gotten into life coaching professionally, is that something you've continued to see in your kind of professional career, that there's a mindset problem? And if so, what is that, and what kind of things do you work on to correct mindset?
1000%. I continue to see it over and over and over. I know for a fact that it's more important than skills. And this kind of goes back to even my story, where I said my journey to real estate started a little over a decade ago. And now, just 3 years ago, we actually started getting somewhere, right? Why? I kept going back. And so, in understanding paradigms, understanding the conscious and subconscious mind and how that works, is what really started to open up my understanding as to why people are stuck and what needs to be worked on. And see, when we were born, Andy, the subconscious mind was the only thing that existed. And as a baby, having your subconscious mind open, and to understand this, let's talk about what the functionality of the subconscious mind really is. It's where your emotions, it's also called your emotional mind, and it doesn't understand the difference between what's real and what's imagined. Think about the earth and planting a seed in the earth, where you plant poison ivy. Poison ivy is what's going to grow. You plant a flower a flower is what's going to grow. And so our subconscious mind is exactly the same. And as a baby, we couldn't tell our parents, no, I don't want to put that on, or this Infamil sucks, I don't want it, right? We kind of just had to do whatever they said. And so if I grew up in America, I would grow up speaking a certain language and being of a certain culture. But if I grew up in China, I would be speaking Chinese and I would have that culture. The reason why is because whatever you pour in your community, your whatever is being said around you is what forms your self-identity and your paradigms. Now, as we grow, our conscious mind develops, and then we think we have the ability to accept and reject things now, right? And so, but what I've found out to be true is that that's not the way that it actually works. And this is the reason why most people are stuck, because you go to a seminar and intellectually in your conscious mind, you're like, man, I want to do that. I'm going to change my life. I know exactly what to do. But your subconscious mind is what really controls your actions. And so if you don't reprogram, or you're not even aware of what's going on in your subconscious mind, you'll never be able to take the right steps to do the things that you intellectually want to do, because your subconscious mind is having you do the opposite. And so we go deep in understanding what self-image is plugged in, what habits, what paradigms is going on in that subconscious mind, because only until you start changing what's going on in the subconscious mind, you're able to take the actions in congruency with what you're thinking.
So I mean, I love how you break it down like that, because I've always wondered, about that. Even in my own life, I mean, there are things that I want to do, like I have an idea for like a book that I want to write. And I'll even sit down and start, writing one morning, a Saturday morning or something, and I'll spend a couple hours. I'm like, oh, this is great.
Yeah.
And then like 6 months later, I've just worked one Saturday on it and it never gets done. Right.
Yeah.
And it now I'm starting to make that. And I always wonder, like, what's going on with how can I go about doing it? Well, maybe it's my mindset. I don't have the right mindset, and it's just not there. The seed's not been properly planted in order to get me to really push forward and get something like that accomplished.
So Sean, if I were to ask you, hey, do you see yourself as an author? What would you say?
No.
There it is.
Yeah.
Right. And so that image that's in the subconscious, you don't see yourself as that thing. So the action will never happen until
Right.
you replace the image that's deep within. And even when you say like, okay, I'm going to start doing that, man, that's when the voices come, right? That's when the voices come. Man, you're going to put out this book and they're going to laugh at you. It's going to suck. Nobody's going to buy it. Like all of those things happen. And this is where the coach comes in, because I tell every single client that comes into my high performance coaching program, you are going to want to quit. It's going to happen. The reason why is because we're going to be rebuilding a self-image, and your brain, which is just a storage, it's a hard drive, is there to protect you. And anytime you start putting anything else in there that's not in congruency, it's going to have you try to retreat. And so that's what I make sure I tell all of my clients. But that's the reason why it's replacing that self-image is where the work has to come in to start actually doing the things you desire to do intellectually.
Keston, I would imagine that this is probably the beginning of the process. All the stuff you discussed at the beginning about, business owners working with you and doubling what they've done or whatever else in the success stories. It sounds to me like these success stories don't happen until the mindset is addressed. Is that right?
100%, man. People think they want more skills. They think they, like, hey, help me do this. And so when they get in the program and we start going through all of the different pillars of life, like energy, courage, influence, and just start taking them through different pillars, they get a little antsy, right? Because it's like, hold on, I thought you're going to help me do this. But as they start leveling up in these areas, all of a sudden they're doing deals in their business, and their things are happening. Now, are there business skills that they need, like sales and all of that? Absolutely. You definitely need those things. But if you don't see yourself as someone that is okay selling, you'll never do it. You always procrastinate. You won't make those calls because you've always heard that salespeople are dirty, or you've always hated car salesmen. And so you have this thing that's buried deep within the subconscious that's now making you procrastinate from achieving your goals. And so, yeah, man, I take them through and identifying what are those paradigms that's holding you back, and let's crush them.
Now, what does this process look like realistically in terms of time frames? And I get that the answer to this question probably depends on every other person. But
Yeah,
when you talk about, I'm just guessing here, but changing a mindset doesn't probably happen with the snap of your fingers.
correct.
And developing the proper mindset and moving that into effective practices that are going to impact your business is going to take some time. What does this realistically look like for the average person?
Andy, that's a phenomenal question. And it has made me create different programs because of this question, right? So someone that comes into my high performance coaching program, they're qualifiers now, where I'm based on the data, I could see the type of person who would be better for me to guide to achieve their goals within 14 weeks. And because it's paradigms, and I could know based on how much money you make today and what you've been able to do, if I could help you. The reason why is because you've already taken your body through a certain level of experience that has allowed you to make the amount of money you make today, right? Would we say that the person who makes 50K has a certain type of habits that allows them to make 50K versus somebody that makes 120K, 150K, right? A year. And so those people have two totally different habits. And so being able to help the person at 50K will take a lot longer because there's more things to go and explain and to do and to get them to change. The person who has accomplished things in their life and is making more, they may understand the concepts a little bit better because they've done work in the past that got them to this place. They've sacrificed, they've finished college, they've done things in their lives that shows that they have the ability to put in the work and get things done. So I could look at my clients and just understand based on what they've accomplished to this point and tell if they're a great fit for my 14-week program. Now, it's hard for me to say bye. Let me just start by saying that, right? So my clients, I don't think I have a client that I still don't speak to or help or support. And so I've created this ongoing support for them where we meet once a month for a year. Although the program is 14 weeks, we meet once a month for a year simply to help them continue to keep their momentum, to continue to add value to their lives, which then gives me the opportunity to gain more skills to have something else for them to do, like leadership, like business, right? Like all of these different things, because the learning never ends. And like you correctly said, Andy, I'm always learning. I got my coaches helping me level up. And so as I learn more, do more, I want to pull my clients up as well. So that's kind of what it looks like and how I'm able to take people through the process, kind of being able to predict based on the type of person that's coming in.
There's a lot of how-to gurus out there. You've experienced some of them, you've paid some of them, you've worked with them. And And I don't even mean that pejoratively. There's very good ones.
Yeah.
And then, of course, like every job, there's not good ones, and maybe there's no value to it. But it seems to me, does it seem like to you in your experience that a lot of the how-to stuff has missed this kind of core piece of mindset? Because it sounds to me like you can pay all the money in the world, but if you've not prepped yourself to be ready uh, to take those lessons, it may just be money out the door.
Dude, you just hit the nail on the head. And maybe like with marketing, it's a marketing thing, right? So you tell people how to do something, they think that they're going to just do it, but they're going to revert right back to who they were, not understanding the core concept as to how the body works, how the mind works. And that's the reason why I'm so passionate about doing this and helping people in this area, taking the holistic approach. And so I could help people in their marriages, I could help people in their businesses. It doesn't matter the aspect of life, because the mind doesn't know the difference. It doesn't matter what you're trying to do. We just need to identify what's keeping you back, what beliefs you currently have, what paradigms that's been installed in there. And I could typically know, because just like Sean said previously, hey man, I wanted to write a book, but it stopped. Like, I don't know why I haven't done it. I could go right to the thing that's keeping it back, because it starts with that self-image, and and I call them the laws. This is just the laws. I didn't make this up. I just follow the laws. And so I also say, if I wanted to become an astronaut, I know how to hack myself to do it, because I have to just follow these laws. It's just the way the mind and the body works. But do I desire to do it enough to go through the transformation process? That's where the question comes in, which is why I align with purpose first. Because if there's purpose, you'd fight through the transformation process to get to where you want to get to. Without that purpose, you're going to quit all day, every day.
So how do you train people to properly identify their purpose?
I have them start with a maybe purpose.
Okay.
You got to start with a maybe purpose, because when someone is talking about purpose, it becomes a very daunting forever thing, right? It's like,
Mhm.
man, I don't know if I want to say this is it, because if I say it, that's what it is, then I can't get out of it. It's forever, right? And so because of that, most people never try to even explore what their purpose is. And so I'm like, hey, maybe it's this, maybe it's that. Let's give yourself permission to try. And once you get that feeling that makes you feel fulfilled, then it's like, ooh, there's something here, right? But you'll never try until you go through that maybe purpose. And how I also help. So that's where we start, by giving yourself permission to try. And then in discovering your purpose, man, it's typically where you're trying to help a previous version of yourself. Like, if you look back at whatever you do today, I could go back and find something that happened in your life that made you want to do those things. And so if you could just skip all the nonsense of trying to just make money to make money, and realize that you're not taking action because man, I don't know why I'm procrastinating. I don't know why I don't have discipline. I don't know why all of these things. The reason why is because you haven't gotten into your own pain. And when you go back to some part of your life that really affected you, that's you reopening a pain wound. And that pain is the motivation to continue. And so for me, what wakes me up at 4 a.m. every day is me never wanting another parent to be standing in the pool with their son and be told you can't come in. That's the pain that makes me push through. And on that journey, it made me try to understand, why did I not be successful by me just saying I want to be successful? What kept me back all of this time? And so it's taking someone on that journey to open up that wound and turn their pain to purpose, and make their purpose make a profit.
Keston, we often hear everybody's need. It's a constant topic in work environments and professional environments, but we hear work-life balance, how important that is. None of us have ever really talked about what that actually means in practice, but we all know that it sounds good and we think that we need it. So let me ask you, is work-life balance important as part of this process? And two, what does that even mean? What does balance mean to you, and how do you teach that?
Well, it's interesting because I always say that I absolutely I hate the word balance. I hate the word balance because balance on a scale is 0, right? And we want to give everything 100% in our lives. And so I want to give my marriage and my kids 100%. I want to give my business 100%. I don't want to give it 0, right? And so keeping that concept in mind, what I have my clients do is create a harmony calendar. And this harmony calendar is where I go to my wife at the beginning of the week, Sunday, preferably. And I say, hey, babe, I really want to, I want to put our marriage and us first. What days do you think we hang out? You want to hang out this week, right? Let me fill that in first before I even do my work calendar. And so if you're able to fill that in, you know when you're going to hang out with the kids, and then you know when you're going to work, and everyone knows what tends to happen is when you're working, they respect you're working because you've already given them their time on the calendar. And so it's a lot easier to say, hey, babe, you mind if we talk about that in our allotted time, right? Because we've discussed this already. And so now you're giving your work 100%. And when you're with her, you're giving her 100% undisturbed. Now, this is the piece that you got to do, because if work comes in between that, then this entire thing goes out the window, right? But if you're able to give 100% to her when it's her time, something beautiful happens, man. And that's what started to happen in my life. And the only reason I know this is because I did the absolute opposite, and had World War X in my home, because I'm like, man, this is a seller call and I got to pick up the phone, on date night, and so that just caused her to feel like the business was more important than her, right? And so that caused me to really start trying to figure out different things. And this is what has worked really well in our relationship. So that's what I have my clients do as well.
So I saw that you posted something on Facebook a couple of days back, and I've never heard this term before, but I love the concept. And I think a lot of people kind of overlook it, which is geographic freedom. You use that term, and I think, and I'm with you, I'm not a big fan of the whole quote unquote work-life balance. I think there's a way that you can meld the two, so that you work and you do life
100%.
and it's all kind of one, you know? But I think that term geographic freedom can play a major role in that. So describe what that means and how you've implemented that in your life.
Man, geographical freedom is probably one of the most beautiful things that anyone could have in their lives. And this just simply means that you're not tied down to a specific city because of your work, because of any type of restrictions. You're able to go wherever you want, work wherever you want, and your business isn't impacted by that. And so that's what geographical freedom really is. And for us, having a online business where our coaching business is online, our real estate stuff, we have people in place where we manage remotely. And there's hardly ever really anything that we do physically. There may be sometimes here and there, but we've accomplished geographical freedom and being able to be anywhere. And so we have points and have we have some points that we haven't used this year yet, where we just want to go for a month and just go somewhere else. We just came back from South Africa from like being there for a little over 10 days. And so just being able to have geographical freedom, it's just a beautiful thing. And here's where, if we were to go back to now paradigms, right? The habits and behaviors that you need to have geographical freedom, because it's not only your business, but here's where leadership and building a team comes in. And what we're taught growing up, we've never been taught how to build a team, how to lead, and all of these different things. And so you got to learn how to do those things first before you could have geographical freedom. Now, there are some businesses that you might just show up and do things, but the real estate company and the real estate business, you need a team. In our coaching company, we need a team. And so being able to manage and do all of those things remotely has given us the ability to kind of move around and be there for my dad in New York when he wasn't feeling well, and it doesn't hurt the business, And so, it was just a concept that I'm like, do people think about this? Like, this is amazing,
Well, Keston, we really appreciate you coming on. This has been invaluable information. I know you mentioned it before, but tell our listeners how they can connect with you and interact with you.
Absolutely. The place that I receive the most messages is definitely Instagram, and that would be Kes on Purpose. Kes on Purpose. If you want to be a part of our free community where all entrepreneurs are living on purpose, then you go to Purpose Ways community on Facebook. So it's Facebook, Purpose Ways, WAZE community, and join entrepreneurs that's living on purpose.
Awesome. Great information. Make sure to follow Keston on any and all available social media channels. You got a YouTube also, I think, right?
We do. And that's Kes on Purpose.
All right. Sounds good. Let's do it again. We had a great time.
Yeah, man, this was awesome. Thank you guys for having me. I really appreciate it. And Sean, if you want to write that book, man, hit me up. Let's work it out.
Okay. Sounds good.
You just set us up for a lot
Keston.
of work, I feel like. All right.
I know.
Thanks so much. We'll see you next time, Keston. We appreciate it. And everybody, thanks for being with us and watching the show. Make sure to join us next week. We're talking about artificial intelligence, AI. Is it the future of real estate? And our guest will be Pace Morby. With that, we'll see you all next week.